But Nadav and Abihu, sons of Aaron, each took his censer, put fire on it, laid incense on it, and offered unauthorized fire before Adonai, something he had not ordered them to do. At this, fire came forth from the presence of Adonai and consumed them, so that they died in the presence of Adonai. Moshe said to Aaron, "This is what Adonai said. Through those who are near me I will be consecrated, and before all the people I will be glorified." Aaron kept silent. Moshe called Mishael and Isvara, Elzaphan, sons of Uzziel, Aaron's uncle, and told them, "Come here, and carry your cousins away from in front of the sanctuary to the place outside the camp." They approached and carried them and their tunics out of the camp, as Moshe had said. Then Moshe told Aaron and his sons, Eleazar and Itamar, "Don't unbind your hair or tear your clothes in mourning, so that you won't die, and so that Adonai won't be angry with the entire community. Rather, let your kinsmen, the whole house of Israel, mourn because of the destruction of Adonai, brought about with his fire. Moreover, don't leave the entrance to the tent of meeting, or you will die, because Adonai's anointing oil is on you." Adonai said to Aaron, "Don't drink any wine or other intoxicating liquor, neither you nor your sons with you, when you enter the tent of meeting, so that you will not die. This is to be a permanent regulation through all your generations, so that you will distinguish between the holy and the common, and between the unclean and the clean, and so that you will teach the people of Israel all the laws of Adonai has told them through Moshe." Moshe said to Aaron and to Eleazar and Itamar, his remaining sons, "Take the grain offering left from the offering for Adonai made by fire, and eat it without leaven next to the altar, because it is especially holy. Eat it in a holy place, because it is your and your sons' share of the offering for Adonai made by fire. For this is what I have been ordered. The breast that was waved and the thigh that was raised you are to eat in a clean place, you and your sons and your daughters with you. For these are given as you and your children's share of the sacrifices of the peace offerings presented by the people of Israel. They are to bring the raised thigh and the waved breast, along with all the offering of fat made by fire, and the wave is as a wave offering before Adonai. Then it will belong to you and your descendants with you as a perpetual share, as Adonai has ordered." Then Moshe carefully investigated what had happened to the goat of the sin offering and discovered that it had been burned up. He became angry with Eleazar and Itamar and the remaining sons of Aaron and asked, Why didn't you eat the sin offering in the area of the sanctuary, since it is especially holy? He gave it to you to take away the guilt of the community, to make atonement before them before Adonai. Look, its blood wasn't brought into the sanctuary. You should have eaten it there in the sanctuary as I ordered." Aaron answered Moshe, "Even though they offered their sin offering and burnt offering today, things like these have happened to me. If I had eaten the sin offering today, would it have pleased Adonai?" On hearing this reply, Moshe was satisfied. Adonai said to Moshe and Aaron, "Tell the people of Israel that these are the living creatures which you may eat among all the land animals. Any that has a separate hoof, which is completely divided and chews the cud. These animals you may eat, but you are not to eat those who only chew cud or only have a separate hoof. For example, the camel, the coney, and the hare are unclean for you, because they chew the cud but don't have a separate hoof. While the pig is unclean for you, because although it has a separate and completely divided hoof, it doesn't chew the cud. You are not to eat meat from those or touch their carcasses. They are unclean for you. Of all the things that live in the water, you may eat these. Anything in the water that has fins and scales, whether in seas or in rivers, these you may eat. But everything in the seas and rivers without both fins and scales, of all the small water creatures and of all the living creatures in the water, it is detestable thing for you. Yes, these are detestable for you. You are not to eat their meat, and you are to detest their carcasses. Whatever lacks fins and scales in the water is a detestable thing for you. The following creatures of the air are to be detestable for you. They are not to be eaten. They are a detestable thing. The eagle, the vulture, the osprey, the kite, the various kinds of buzzards, the various kinds of ravens, the ostrich, the screech owl, the seagull, the various kinds of hawks, the little owl, the cormorant, the great owl, the horned owl, the pelican, the barn owl, the stork, the various kinds of herons, the hoopoe, the bat. All winged swarming creatures that go on all fours are detestable things to you, except that of all winged swarming creatures that go on all four, you may eat those who have joined legs above their feet, enabling them to jump off the ground. Specifically, of these, you may eat all various kinds of locusts, grasshoppers, katydids, and crickets. But other than that, all winged swarming creatures having 4 feet are a detestable thing to you. The following will make you unclean. Whoever touches the carcass of any of them will be unclean until evening, and whoever picks up any part of their carcasses to wash his clothes and be unclean until evening. Every animal that is separate but incompletely divided hoof, or that doesn't chew the cud, is unclean for you. Anyone who touches them will be unclean. Whatever goes on its paws among all animals that go on all fours is unclean for you. Whoever touches its carcass will be unclean until evening. And whoever picks up its carcass is to wash his clothes and be unclean until evening. These are unclean for you. The following are unclean for you among the small creatures, that swarm on the ground: the weasel, the mouse, the various kinds of lizards, the gecko, the land crocodile, the skink, the sand lizard, and the chameleon. These are unclean crawling creatures. Whoever touches them when they are dead will be unclean until evening. Anything on which one of them falls when dead will become unclean: wooden utensils, articles of clothing, leather, sacking, any utensil used for work. It must be put in water, and it will be unclean until evening. Then it will be clean. If one of them falls into a clay pot, whatever is in it will become unclean, and you are to break the pot. Any food permitted to be eaten that water from such a vessel gets on will become unclean, and any permitted liquid in such a vessel will become unclean. Everything on which any carcass part of there falls will become unclean. Whether oven or stove, it is to be broken in pieces. They are unclean and will be unclean for you. Although a spring or a cistern for collecting water remains clean, but if anyone who touches one of the carcasses will become unclean. If any carcass part of theirs falls on any kind of seed to be sown, it is clean. But if water is put on the seed and the carcass part of theirs falls on it, it is unclean for you. If an animal of any kind that you are permitted to eat dies, whoever touches its carcass will be unclean until evening. A person who eats meat from its carcass and carries its carcass is to wash his clothes. He will be unclean until evening. Any creature that swarms on the ground is a detestable thing. It is not to be eaten. Whatever moves on its stomach goes on all fours and has many legs. All creatures that swarm on the ground, you are not to eat them, because they are a detestable thing. You are not to make yourselves detestable with any of these swarming, crawling creatures. Do not make yourselves unclean with them. Do not defile yourselves with them. For I am Adonai your God. Therefore consecrate yourselves and be holy, for I am holy. And do not defile yourselves with any kind of swarming creature that moves along the ground. For I am Adonai, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. Therefore you are to be holy, because I am holy. Such then is the law concerning animals, flying creatures, all living creatures that move about in the water, and all creatures that swarm on the ground. Its purpose is to distinguish between the unclean and the clean, and between the creatures that may be eaten and those that may not be eaten. Adonai said to Moshe, "Tell the people of Israel, if a woman conceives and gives birth to a boy, she is to be unclean for 7 days, with the same uncleanliness as a nidah. When she is having her menstrual period, on the 8th day, a baby's foreskin is to be circumcised. She is to wait an additional 33 days to be purified from her blood. She is not to touch any holy thing or come into the sanctuary until the time of her purification is over. But if she gives birth to a girl, she will be unclean for 2 weeks, as in her niddah, and she is to wait another 66 days to be purified from her blood. When the days of her purification are over, whether for a son or for a daughter, she is to bring a lamb in its first year to be burnt for a burnt offering, and a young pigeon or dove for a sin offering to the entrance of the tent of meeting, to the Kohen. You are to offer it before Adonai and to make atonement for her. Thus she will be purified from her discharge of blood. Such is the law for a woman who gives birth, whether to a boy or to a girl. If she can't afford a lamb, she is to take 2 doves and 2 young pigeons, the one for the burnt offering and the other for the sin offering. The Kohen will make atonement for her, and she will be clean.